for this nice delivery. Now, I would like to move on to Associate Professor from the Northern Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, and he is going to refer to Turkish jurisdictions and the East Med. You have 15 minutes, Professor. I can't hear you.
Evet, sesim geliyor mu hocam?
Can you hear me, Professor? Yes, I can hear you now. I would like to thank you very much. Selamun Aleyküm to everyone. This is a very nice atmosphere. We are hosting a valuable meeting. I would like to extend my gratitude to ASSAM, and I greet all colleagues respectfully. I would like to explain the legitimate rights of the Turkish Cypriots by referring to the maritime rights. That's why I will use present slides in English, but speak in Turkish. Now I'm moving on to my first slide. The law of the sea, before looking at the law of the sea or maritime law, we can refer to the UN as the most important platform for the resolution of disputes. And here our concern is to ensure a just order that will serve equity. And here the most important governance body is the United Nations. So here, peace plus international security guide the activities of the UN. But when we look at the real world, we see that international peace and security is not achieved to a certain extent. Now, I would like to refer to President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's saying, which says that the world is higher than 5 or bigger than 5, which is all the more pertinent. The economic, environmental, and technological problems proliferate the number of global issues, and it also involves the fight with coronavirus. You see climate pollution, air pollution, and hunger, which continues to test people all around the world. Again, water crisis, drug trafficking, and many other issues continue to beset the world. And here we're talking about Eastern Mediterranean. We see ignorance of Turkey's initiatives for a fair solution. And we see a biased approach of the Western world, considering Eastern Mediterranean. So in the face of these injustices against the Islamic world and wider globe, Turkey adopts an attitude, and here Mediterranean is important, which makes the Western world to deprive Turkey from its rights. Everything is shaped under the theme of energy security. That's how the European discourse is developed. They also talk about NATO energy security. That's the sort of path they envisage, and that causes many problems to occur in the Mediterranean. The most prominent of which is about Cyprus. Cyprus disputes includes maritime jurisdiction disputes, as well as airspace, and they in fact constitute as the basis of many other problems. And Mediterranean becomes the center of many problems. Now let's look at the law of the sea. Now, Turkey has been on the side of international law, and that also applies to the codification process starting with the 1930s.
Bu görüşmelere katılıp
Participated in such negotiations and made their contributions. The government of Republic of Turkey, starting from 30s, 58, and coming to the latest convention in 82. So we see it has not become a party to this contract or agreement, which means that, does it mean that Turkey has no right in the field of maritime? No, even though Turkish Republic is not a party, within the scope of the essential rights codified with the contract in 1982, it has exclusive sovereign rights and some of the sovereign rights. What are those? Well, so when we look at the internal waters and the territorial sea, it has exclusive sovereign rights, and right next to that, within the frame of continental shelf, exclusive economic zone, it has some legitimate rights. So we could offer our perspective both in terms of legal and technical affairs. It's important because just look at this slide over here. So this is also showing the lands or zones where Turkey holds rights. So we can't simply say that you have territorial sea rights in Aegean Sea, or does Turkey hold rights beyond the unknown? That is very worthy of discussion. A coastal country, so the Red Sea, Mediterranean, it doesn't matter. The coastal states have the exclusive, fully exclusive sovereign rights. So how do they define their territorial seas with their essential rights, which is codified with 1982? So how shall Turkey define its rights? Because strait baselines, when we look at the coastal situation, we have the islands, and we also have fringe islands and intended protrusions. And because it has that, so Turkey shall exercise those essential rights. Why is that important? Because in order to distinguish the internal waters from the territorial seas, because when you look at the maritime law, this is giving you the designated sovereign field of rights or your mandate. So in Mediterranean, they have determined their internal waters in accordance with the strait baselines. So you see the number of or the list of countries which have done so. And this inclination, this tendency is continued at an increased rate. Morocco and Spain, between Morocco and Spain in Mediterranean, there has been an ongoing conflict. Likewise, Malta and its neighbors, there has been an ongoing conflict. But the Western world is always threatening Turkey with sanctions as if Turkey has no rights. Italy, in the Bay of Toronto, it has accepted this as a historical internal water, hence involving them. Likewise, Libya, Sidra Bay, a historical claim in terms of the internal water. So you see Greece and the Greek Cypriot claims. So does not Turkey have a coast, or don't have the delta opening or the river openings? All of these issues in terms of distinguishing the internal waters or the territorial waters, territorial seas, they are putting forward which essential rights shall be exercised. So in terms of the internal waters of Turkey, as claimed by the Western world, in those mapped areas, they claim that Turkey has only internal waters. Some authors claim that it's up to over here. But when we look at the state of the Turkish Republic, so over here it's Iskenderun internal water, and Mersin, Antalya, and again over these coastal area, they all point to the coastal waters, and the blue ones indicate the territorial waters. So in the maritime law, we have how we identify the legitimate rights. Of course, first of all, internal waters, followed by the territorial waters, and then the external continental shelf, and the exclusive economical zone rights. So the state of the Turkish Republic is told that regardless, disregarding this map, they're trying to impose this notion. And Turkey, you don't have any further rights, they say. But when you cross-check, we have a contiguous zone right, particularly in terms of the financial or health or customs aspects. Beyond 24 nautical miles, it has the right to exercise its own right. And in the continental shelf, based on the geological zone, it has a right to simply preserve and exercise those. Because when you check Article 77, Provision 3, the rights of the coastal state over the continental shelf do not depend on occupation, effective or notional, or in any express proclamation. So in the continental shelf, if the other countries which would like to exercise their activities, Turkey has its sovereign rights. Well, it could be, in case someone would like to install a pipeline, they have to get the permission from Turkey. So Article 79 with Provision 3, there is this laying of such pipelines, delineation is subject to the consent of the coastal state. So now that Turkey has its existing rights, but some country would like to just claim otherwise. But be it the continental shelf or the exclusive sovereign rights, based on the simply the scientific research, it has been aligned with the United Nations. So if, for example, anyone would like to conduct hydrocarbon research without the permission of Turkey, they cannot take one single step, because the legitimate rights of Turkey were registered at the United Nations. It exclusively keeps its exclusive sovereign rights. In all of the letters submitted to UN, Turkey, Republic of Turkey state has put forward those. So this is going to be the subject of another simple presentation. But when we look at within the scope of the island regime, Turkey is telling Greece is that I have a right for all of my islands, 6 nautical miles. And the Greek Cyprus says that, well, I have 2. So for Meis Island, which is actually a very tiny island, 40,000 square meters, right, belongs to Greece. Turkey, you should accept that. So over here, when we look at the court, we call this common law, or the law of precedents, on the basis of the impact factor, there is a classification, and the islands could bear different statuses. And you see, there are a number of court resolutions, and I don't have time to dive into those. But I'm going to pose a number of questions based on this map. So between these coastal lines and the, for example, Turkey and Libya, I'm going to come to that. And before they are completed among different countries, is it legal to impose this map? Is it aligned with the maritime law? Not really, because this is very much against the nature of the maritime law, because we have simply in the status 38, Article 74 and 73 of the International Court of Justice agreement, there has to be a just and equitable decision. So there is no other thing to discuss. It's very clear. The international law is very clear. And in the Eastern Mediterranean and in Cyprus, there was not even a classification among different British bases Why? Because in the domestic law of the southern Cyprus, there is no distinction in terms of the coastal waters or the nearby seas. So, in terms of the limitation of the internal waters, based on the domestic law of the southern Cyprus, is not actually justified. And as you saw the map over here, and again, starting from 2003, they starting from the limitation, both the sea or the carbon activities, I call it the so-called, because Cyprus Turkish permission and consent were not taken while these steps were taken. They simply acted on their own, and the Cyprus issue is an international issue, and they're not simply complying with the rules and regulations and laws. All of the world, including the Muslim community, the Muslim world, need to reconsider this for justice, for a just and equitable order, and also considering the legitimate rights of the Turkish Cypriots. We need to support the persistent stance of Turkey. Turkey is doing the right thing. That's why they are there, for maintaining peace, stability, international justice, and international safety and security. So, so this part, which was established when you look at the line with Israel and southern Cyprus, with this line, you know what they did? This time they were simply violating the rights of Palestine. And again, they also violated the border rights of Lebanon. Then where do we have the legitimate rights? Where do we have the rights? Why? Because of the why the violation of the Palestinian rights was not objected, and why does not anyone say anything or oppose to the unrightful acts of Israel, and there has been authorization to the the incorporated partnership, because that is a state, the Turkish Cypriot state. So why the Western world, in terms of, they're not saying anything against Israel and the Southern Greek Republic, Southern Cyprus Republic. Why? Because in all of the letters on the level of the UN, what does it say? In the Cyprus issue, there is no single authority. So it's not the Greek, the Greek authority, the Greek Cypriot authority is not representing the Turkish Cypriots, and you see the rights, the violations, and we see simply a number of different agreements. So in conclusion, between Turkey and the Northern Cyprus, this agreement was sent to the UN, and they were informed about that. And Turkey-Libya maritime boundary, on the basis of the boundary agreement, Turkey is the owner of the legitimate rights. And all of the efforts are aligned with the dialogue in a very peaceful fashion. Hydrocarbon activities have been continued by Turkey. The pink areas indicate where the Turkish Petrol Incorporated partnership was authorized, because the Greek Cypriot state is trying to violate the rights of the Turkish Cypriots, and because they are one of the founding partners, they have legitimate rights. So against these attitudes of the Greek Cypriots, and this authorization took place in 2011. Greece, Lebanon, Israel, Syria, and Egypt have also hydrocarbon activities. We know the problem in Libya, and one of the most important partners in this respect, in terms of the pipeline, they would like to simply extend it through the Turkish continental shelf, and the rights of Turkey are ignored. Hence, Turkey is ignored. And like now takes NOTAM, we have such issues. In the air control zone, they would like to shut down Turkey, and they merely would like to simply put Turkey into sort of a prison such as this one. How can Turkey accept those? How can we talk about rights? How can we talk about international justice in this respect? So, in the international courts, they have taken very clear attitudes. We know the pathway in the maritime authorization, and Eastern Mediterranean has its sui generis character.
Emete Hocam, sesiniz gitti.
Well, I think you're cut off. Actually, you were completely beyond your time. So, Professor,
Sesiniz gelmiyor.
we can't hear you. I think it's frozen.
Teknik bir sıkıntı var galiba. Ersan Hocam, Emete Hocamın sesi, gerçi görüntü de gitti.
Well, I think she's disconnected.
Süreyi de bayağı açtık.
We were completely beyond our time anyway. Okay, let's continue with the second speaker.